Okay, let's go ahead and get started making our cupcake cake. This is going to be like a really kind of fun, cartoony style cake. So we want things to be sort of exaggerated. So we're going to keep in mind that things are not going to be realistic and sharp. You know, we want things to be kind of rounded and cute looking. And the way we're going to construct this cupcake cake is the base is going to be one cake, and the frosting is going to be the second cake, and then we're going to stack them on top of each other. So it's kind of like having a two-tier cake, except for that it just happens to look like a cupcake on the outside. So we're going to make the top part first, and you're going to need an 8-inch cake, 6-inch, and I used a ball pan for the very top part, but you could use a 4-inch pan if you don't have a ball pan. But this is like a 4-inch ball pan, so it's rounded, and that just kind of helps with the process. I've baked off all of my cakes, and then I chilled them in the refrigerator so that they're easy to handle. I'm just going to put a piece of plastic down to kind of catch my carving mess. And this is an 8-inch cardboard round that's going to support the bottom of the frosting layer of cake. I'm going to trim off the top of this, unlock my wheel. Just going to trim off the dome. And then I like a lot of frosting, so I'm going to tort this cake, which basically means I'm just cutting it in half. I'm going to take some of our buttercream filling, just put that in there. Delicious. And then we're going to take our 6-inch cake and just set that right there in the middle. And again, cut off the dome. And then lastly, our little round guy right on top. Just going to cut that dome off real quick as well. And I actually have a set of ball pans that's like an 8-inch, a 6-inch, and a 4-inch, and I use them like all the time. So if you're considering getting a set of ball pans, I would encourage that because they come in very handy. Okay, so now we're going to carve this little beehive shape into a cupcake. So what I'm going to do is just starting so that I'm flush with the top of this dome, I'm just going to make a line that just kind of goes down like that. And I'm just going to trim this part out, just like that. And what I'm creating basically is like a little swirl. And then I could take this and cut a little crevice out of that. You see that kind of continues this little swirl that we've created like that. And then I'm going to cut another one like this. And that's really all you need to do. So we got this little swirl here. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Just going to cut right like that and then cut that wedge out. You should probably eat the scraps too. That's kind of mandatory. And you could, if you wanted to, slightly round off those sharp edges, but to be honest, once we kind of crumb coat everything, it doesn't really matter. It kind of all gets rounded out. You can if you want to. So just a little simple carving, nothing too crazy, just enough to give it some definition. So now I'm going to crumb coat this, which means that I'm just putting a thin layer of buttercream over the entire surface to seal in the crumbs, and then I'm going to put it into the refrigerator overnight before I start decorating, because I that's just my process, and I prefer to work with my cakes fully chilled after they have buttercream on them. But if you were doing this all in one shot, you could potentially stick it into the freezer for just a few, you know, like 20 minutes or so, and that will chill it enough that you can work with it. Okay, that looks pretty good. Nice little crumb coat going on. I'm just gonna go and stick this in the refrigerator. So the bottom, we're going to actually be using a 6-inch round, and I'm using 2 7-inch cakes, but that's kind of a specific size. So if you only have 8-inch rounds, you could bake off 8-inch rounds and trim them down to size. Have the buttercream in the center. We're going to place our 6-inch board on the top. Let's just go ahead and glue that down with just a little bit of buttercream. And you can see that our 6-inch is just very slightly smaller, and we're going to use that as a guide and cut at an angle down to the outside edge. So what we're looking for is a nice gentle line from here down, because we're trying to make a cupcake shape. And instead of going from the top down, starting at the bottom going up, the shape is a little bit easier. So just take your time. So we've got our nice, just gradual slant going down. Just going to slip our hand underneath and just flip that over. And now we can crumb coat this and put it into the refrigerator with our other cake. Okay, so let's start making our beautiful little tip to our candle. It's going to look like this and light up, just like that. And what I'm using are something called balloon lights, and you can buy these on Amazon. I'll have the link to my Amazon store where you can get all these supplies in the description of the video. But these are just like little lights that are LED operated, and you can put them into a balloon and it lights them up. But they are great for cake special effects. So for this, we're going to take off this little rubber piece, and we're going to take off this little plastic piece on the end. And I have my Semi-Cakes isomalt all melted up. This is just a ready-to-use isomalt that I really love. And I'm just going to pour a small amount onto my Silpat. This is a Ruth Ricky Silpat, and I like it because it's just small, so it's easy to maneuver for this. And then we're going to cool this down by just folding the mat over and just going like this. And when it starts sticking to itself, it's getting to the point where, you know, we want to start working with it with our hands. And you kind of have to go fast at this because, you know, it cools down pretty fast. You see how it's just kind of going into its own little ball? And I'm just wearing regular latex gloves. I'm just going to put that right on top of our little LED. And I want it to be the same thickness as our LED, and then get wider at the top. Don't worry about it looking rough right now. This is just the inside piece. I'm just going to make basically this shape. You see how it's kind of thinner at the bottom, and then it gets thicker up at the top. And I'm just going to kind of hold this in my hands until it doesn't feel warm anymore, because if it's still warm and I just set this on the table, it'll start pooling and settling and getting a little flat spot. So you want to just kind of hold it in your hands until it's cool to the touch and it's not moving around anymore. Maybe just a couple minutes. And while that's cooling, I'm going to Just pop this in the microwave again for maybe 10 seconds, just so it's a little bit more liquidy for the next step. And I always kind of heat up my isomalt on a plate and have a little toothpick nearby so that I can keep it stirred, and if it boils over or anything like that, then it's not going to get it all over my microwave. So I just want this to just thicken up just a little bit more. Okay, that looks like it's about ready. And then I'm just going to take this piece and just kind of dunk it in there. And this basically creates a nice smooth outer finish to our thing here. And it's going to be kind of drippy, so I'm just kind of rotating this to kind of keep everything from falling to the side. So turn it over. And the more you touch this with your fingers, the less shiny it's going to be. So try not to touch it too much with your fingers. Just kind of let gravity keep it all on there while it cools. Once things stop moving around and it feels like it's kind of staying in the same place, but it's still a little soft, just take the tip and just create a nice little point. And I can still feel this is quite warm still. I don't want to handle this too much because I don't want to take away my shine. And then I'm just going to give that a little twist. Just like that. And then again, I'm just going to keep holding. Oh, shoot. That can happen. Just going to dunk it in just a little bit of isomalt, stick it back on there. Stay on there. Everything's okay still. Isomalt doesn't like to stick very well to the plastic, so if that comes off, just do what I did and just dip it in a little bit of hot isomalt and glue it back on there. So it's stuck again. You gotta work fast. And you can kind of shine the outside if you've got any fingerprints on there with your hand. And then once that's cool, we have a beautiful little candle. Now we're ready to insert this into our gum paste candle stems for the full effect. All right, so we have our chilled cupcake top here, and I'm just going to apply a nice liberal amount of buttercream. Now we're going to take our fondant. I've decided to use a nice blue color, and I just dyed this. This is just my LMF fondant, and I dyed this with a mixture of electric blue and a touch of royal blue. I can't really see the label, but royal blue. So it's got this nice rich blue color. Putting some powdered sugar out, and this is fresh LMF, so it's already kneaded and ready to go. And I'm not going to roll this quite as thin as I normally do, because I want to have some give as I go into all those little nooks and crannies. So instead of like 1/8 of an inch, go about 1/16 of an inch. And I've got some bubbles here, which is normal. It just happens. I'm going to use a little acupuncture needle. It's like a really small needle. And just go around and pop my bubbles. And I like to do that before it's all rolled out, so any kind of imperfections in the fondant get disguised. Okay, throw that away. And continue rolling out here. Okay. I'm going to roll my fondant up onto my rolling pin. And I have not chilled my buttercream because it's all going to get kind of smoothed out in this process. So starting from the top, we're basically just going to feel our way around and just push all the air out, starting from the top and working our way down. Trying to get it out of all those little nooks and crannies. So got this one. this one. And then just use your hands to just kind of finesse the swirl. See? Just kind of, because the buttercream is soft, you can just kind of use your hands to define where the lines are. When you're happy with the swirl, go ahead and take an X-Acto blade and about, I would say, 1/2 inch all the way around. Just gonna cut, just like that. Use a little offset spatula to get under our cake. Put a smaller sized pan just underneath and just a little bit of water. We're just gonna get just the underside of our fondant wet. Not too wet. And then we're just going to fold that ledge just underneath. And then I will actually just leave this on top of the cake pan like this, like in the fridge and stuff, because it just kind of keeps this edge clean. Smooth out any imperfections. See, that wasn't too hard. I knew you could do it. I really like this part. Kind of making the swirls with my hands. And the great thing about LMF is, you know, it doesn't get elephant skin, so you really have a lot of time to just kind of fuss. And I like that part. I like the fussing. I like it. Very cute. Set that guy aside. And now we're going to cover the bottom, but I will need my turntable, so I'll put you there. So for this guy, we do want to put it back into the refrigerator to chill. So first, I just want to make sure my top is pretty flat, and you know, you can use a level to make sure that the top is flat. So you just kind of get a nice amount of buttercream on there. See how good I am to getting this level. There. Let's take our level that I only use for cake decorating. Oh man, look at that. I don't want to brag or anything, but I kind of am good. Just a little bit off on that side, but close enough. All right, and then just a nice coat around the outside. And remember that this is at an angle, so we're not going for straight up and down. Basically the shape of a flower pot. We're going for, now I am gonna go pop this into the freezer for like 10 or 15 minutes so that my buttercream is nice and firm. And then I'm gonna scrape it all down so that I have a super sharp edge to work with. So right now, if we put fondant over this, it would just bubble up and be all sloppy looking. Not what we're going for. Okay, so to make our candles, we're gonna take a little bit of the blue we made earlier and mix it with some white to get a light blue. And we're just going to knead both of them until they're nice and soft. And we're just gonna roll our blue out into a nice long skinny piece of fondant. And then we're going to roll up our white, and we want it to be about twice as big as the blue. We're going to take a paper straw and just squeeze a little bit of glue just down into the top. And then we're going to just pop that right over the end and just let that glue on. And then take your two pieces and just point them slightly. Just starting out at the top. Just going to start wrapping our way down. I have 2 others that are done, so I can kind of guesstimate about how long I want them to be. And then take your fondant smoother and just lightly roll it to flatten it out. And I like mine to be tapered, so I kind of press a little bit harder down towards the bottom so they get a nice taper going up. And then just cut off any extras. And then I just put a little bit of water right down towards the edge to kind of make sure that fondant glues that. Make sure the top is nice and flat. So now, to turn these on, because we've glued the light to the isomalt, you can just rotate it and it turns on. And then we have our candle, and then you just rotate it to turn off. So that way our battery is conserved until we put them onto the cake. And then of course you can trim the straw to be however long you need it to be. It's pretty cool, huh? Okay, so we have our cake and it's all chilled from the refrigerator. I'm just going to use my bench scraper here to just smooth out the top. I'm just scraping it down little by little. You can fill in any holes that there might be. And because the cake is so cold, it just kind of melds in within everything. And then do the same thing to the sides. Oops. Because this cake is so small, you kind of have to hold it with your hand. Just scraping off any of the lumps and bumps. So we could stop here. If you want a really, really smooth, sharp edge, you can take a little piece of parchment, put that on the top, flip it over, and now you can really make sure your paper's perfectly flat. Now we can really get down. Now I'm just going to heat up my bench scraper with some hot water. And I'm just going to do one little last sweep around to just kind of smooth out any rough spots. And that's it. Just flip that back over. So now I want to cover my cupcake bottom in our purple fondant. Now this fondant has been made today, but it is a little stiff, so I'm going to heat this up for about 20 seconds. Okay, that's better. I'm just going to give this a couple stretches. I made this purple with AmeriColor electric colors, and I used some electric pink, some electric purple, and a little bit of regal purple, which is also AmeriColor. It's nice, bright, beautiful purple. Put a little bit of sugar on here just in case. Roll that up and unroll. I'm going to use a smoother to make sure we don't have any bubbles trapped on the top first. And then to cover, we're just going to start from the top, and just wherever there's a ruffle, we're just going to pull that out gently and then press the fondant against the cake. And the fondant will stretch. You just got to be sweet to it. Say, don't tear fondant. I would be ever so happy if you could just work with me. And it just does what you tell it to. Don't worry about if there's a couple little wrinkles, we can buff those out. This should take you no more than 5 minutes to cover the cake. So try not to fuss with it too much. That's how you start getting tears and problems and things. Just go around with our hands to kind of stretch it the rest of the way. And then we're going to use our fondant smoother, just kind of pushing it against the cake to smooth it out, work out any bubbles, and also smooth out any ripples or seams that we might have got. See, there's a bubble right there. Down, bubble, go down. I'm going to take our little blade, just about 1/4 inch around. I'm going to cut. For a second. For this part, I'm just going to pick up your cake and put down like a bowl or a cup or something, and just go around, push that edge down with your fondant smoother. Okay, and then move this. And I'm going to use my turntable extender for this, which you can get at Innovative Sugar Works, but you could just use a board if that's what you have. And then I'm just going to place that right on top, and this is all chilled, so it's perfectly safe, everything we're doing, you know. And I'm just going to cut off the excess. It's kind of a dull blade. Get a new blade. Just clean this blade so that works better. Should be able to just cut through it just like that. So now we're going to sharpen our bottom edge using our fondant smoother. It's going to go around and just push this edge until it gets nice and sharp. And this is actually how I prepare all of my cakes. This is the upside down technique that I was taught by Jessica Harris, and now I use it for everything. If you want to learn the whole deal with the upside down technique, you can always check out her class, Clean and Simple Cake Designs, on Craftsy.com. It is absolutely the best class on Craftsy by far, worth every single penny. And if you go to her Facebook page, she has a coupon code that you can use to get the class. So I definitely recommend that, because it will basically change your life. And you learn a lot more than just the upside down technique. She teaches you all kinds of stuff about ganache and sharp corners and edges. It's a beautiful thing. Okay. Flip it all over. There we have our gorgeous super sharp edges. Get rid of my extender because I don't need that anymore. So now we need to add the stripes to our cake. I'm going to take a little bit of our purple fondant and some white fondant, just a little bit, to make a light purple fondant. Okay, it's going to roll this out. Just make sure it's as tall as it needs to be. So this is about half of a rolling pin tall, so that's plenty tall enough. And then once you have how tall it is, then you start adding width. And try and make this fairly thin, about in the 1/16 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch. So now I'm going to put this onto a board. This is actually just a tray as I'm cutting out my strips, because then I'm going to pop it into the freezer, and that will make it a little bit easier to assemble this onto the cake. So let's grab our ruler, and we're just going to create a nice straight baseline. And try make a nice straight line over there. And we're just going to use the width of our ruler as the measuring stick. Okay, I'm going to go pop this into the freezer about 10 minutes. So while our stripes are freezing, let's go ahead and make some sprinkles. So these are not small sprinkles. They're kind of big because we have a giant cupcake, right? So we're just going to take some various colors. I'm going to do blue, pink, yellow, and green. And this is just my white LMF fondant that I've added a little bit of the electric Americolors. This was electric pink, electric green, electric yellow, and electric blue. Imagine that. So I added a little bit of Tylose powder to this so that they'd stiffen up a little bit. And to make a sprinkle, just take off about a pea-sized amount, roll into a ball, and then just roll it between your fingers until you have a sprinkle. And I would probably make, 10 of each color, just like that. Seems tedious, but it really doesn't take that long until we have all our sprinkles. And these are going to go on top of our cupcake. Let's go ahead and insert our straw structure. When you're making a 2-tier cake, you always have dowels or something inside the cake to support the weight of the top layer. So even when you're doing sculpted cakes, you still need to consider the weight of the cake above it. We're going to put some fat straws, which is what I use to dowel all my cakes, into this cake. So I've just placed one straw straight down into the center and then marked with my thumb where the top of the cake is. And then the straw goes flying. And I'm going to use that to measure all of my other straws. I'm making sure that I am cutting nice and straight across. And this is a 8-inch cake on top, so I'm going to go for 8 straws in the bottom, 1 for each inch. And you want to make sure that your straws are about 1 inch away from the edge of the cake so that they're not poking out through the bottom. See that? Almost poked out through the bottom. Be careful of that. Good. Okay, so we have our fondant strips that are been freezing and they're easy to handle now. So we're going to start placing those onto the cake evenly. Just try and space them the same distance apart. Again, we'll just use our scalpel to just cut off, make sure it's clean. Clean scalpel, clean cuts. Just use your fondant smoother, make sure everything's just pressed on there nice and flat. Now we can take our cupcake top, which has been chilling in the fridge, and place that right on top. There we go. Just kind of make sure that's centered. That's pretty much all you got to do. So now I want this cupcake to look like it's got some yummy chocolate drizzling down the top of it, right? So I'm just going to take some water, just kind of get this just a little bit tacky. And then I'm going to take my brown fondant, carefully roll it out. And then we're going to place this into the freezer, just like we did with the stripes. Just like that. So we have our fondant that's been chilling in the freezer, and we're going to cut basically a splatter mark. So we're going to take our clean X-Acto blade or scalpel, and we're just going to kind of go with the shape that we have here and just kind of create a splatter mark. So it looks like drips. So we're gonna make like a long splatter and then a short one, and then a long one and then a short one. And be careful not to cut your fingers, just go nice and slow until you have a nice big splatter. And then we'll just remove the excess fondant, and we're just going to place this on top of our cupcake. And it looks like we have some like chocolate drizzled over the top. And then we're just going to smush the fondant just kind of into all the crevices of the cupcake, so it looks like it's drizzling over everything. And now we're going to airbrush some color into the crevices of the blue frosting before we go any further. So I've got my airbrush ready to go here, and I've got some royal blue airbrush color from Crystal Colors. Just going to So I just want to create some shadow just around the bottom. And always go lighter than you think you need to with airbrush colors because they do darken. So got that shadow around the bottom. I'm just spraying lightly just into wherever there's a crevice to just accent the look of the frosting. And then I'm just going to do just a little bit underneath. The chocolate area. And then I'm just going to do a little bit down at the bottom. Okay. Very good. Okay, so now we can go to our next piece, which is the cherry on top. So I'm just using my finger to just kind of create an indentation. We're just going to take some of our white and just roll out a nice long skinny piece. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then we're going to fold it in half, give it a little twist. Okay, just going to trim off this end. I'm just going to get this a little bit wet right here, just a dad, just a tad. I'm going to take our little swirl of white, just wrap that around there, and line up your edges. And this is just going to look like a little bit of white frosting right on top, all cute like. And then you're going to take a little bit of red, and we're just going to roll this into a ball, just with no seams in it. Okay, add a little more little water just to get that to stick on there. It just goes right there in the middle. How cute. How cute is that? I'll tell you how cute it is. It's really, really cute. Oops, don't want our little seam to break. So let's go ahead and prepare our cake board. All right, so to make our cake board, I'm going to use a 10-inch cake board from Cake Support Solutions, but you could use a cake drum if that's what you want. And then I'm just going to cut myself 4 squares of just some poster board to use as feet. And I'm just going to glue those on. Just a little bit of glue from my glue gun. Sometimes I like to cover my cake boards in just a little bit of fondant to just kind of finishes the look. So I'm just going to coat the top with just a little bit of vegetable shortening to make it sticky. And I've got some green fondant here that I'm just going to roll out. I've just heated it up so that it's nice and stretchy. And then after I have it sort of rolled out, I'll just actually put it right onto the cake board and just roll it just enough so that it covers everything. Because this is a thin board, I don't have to worry about finishing it off with a ribbon. But if you had a cake drum or a board, you'd want to finish this edge with a ribbon. And then I'm just going to use my X-Acto blade here to just line up with the edge and cut off the excess. And I usually just take a smoother and I'll just kind of soften that edge. So now, to place this on the board, just going to push it to the edge, get my offset spatula, just lift it carefully, place that on there. All right, so let's go ahead and place on some sprinkles. Got our cute little sprinkles everywhere. Just gonna put those on randomly. There we go. And then we're gonna take our candles. Let's put one here. Trim off a little bit. I want it to just touch the bottom of the board. A little bit shorter. Go. And then when it's party time, you can just turn the isomalt to turn on all of the flames. Doesn't that look so cool? I'm just going to give everything a little spray of water to clean up any of the powdered sugar and everything. And I'm going to glaze the top of my cherry here with a little bit of confectioner's glaze to give it some shine. And that's it, guys. That's how you make a giant cupcake without a cupcake pan. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I'm Liz Merrick, and I'll see you guys next time.